What I didn't know is that there's apparently since the early 1960s, there were something called uncorrelated targets. And people have been finding them in hundreds per week or something like that, where, again, they see something only once or a few times on a radar or with the optical sensors, and then they can't track it, so it becomes an uncorrelated target, and they are always reduced from the background when people calculate the number of objects in space, let's say space trash and satellites in space.
How do you separate an uncorrelated target from a satellite? How do you know? Because it's not orbiting like a satellite?
Because they can't track it, so they, if I understand it correctly, NASA and ESA and those always remove it from the background.
Okay.
They remove this background of uncorrelated targets from the total number of things that they see in order to calculate the number of objects in space. However, I think that they don't do it themselves. It's done by militaries, and it's classified lists. So it's kind of becoming a little bit more fun. I'm trying to look into this right now.
Yeah. So maybe like you mentioned recently, like, NASA's the kind of the more civilian space exploration outfit. Obviously, they do intelligence work as well. But maybe Space Force has these targets, these uncorrelated targets, and they remove them for NASA?
I think that's what I heard from someone on the inside, yes. That they don't do it themselves. It's the Space Force that has these lists. These lists are classified, as also those earliest from the 1960s. Because what I would like to have is one of these lists.
But it
coordinates and check if they vanish in the shadow.
Totally. I mean, because if they didn't vanish, they wouldn't just be noise. Because it sounds like systematically people looking at space are calling them uncorrelated targets. You're basically, it's like it's noise in the data or something. It's something to be filtered out. But in fact, you have other agencies that are systematically tracking the noise, because it's not just noise. These are objects, maybe.
It's very interesting. And I learned also that it's like they make up the majority of the things that we see on the sky today. But again, I didn't know about it. So I'm wondering a little bit, are my transients similar to these uncorrelated targets, of course? Yeah. It's one of the things I'm wondering about, because that would be interesting.
That would be amazing, because 15,000 a year or 20,000, whatever number that we come to is a lot. I mean, the amount of satellites in space, like, I don't even know what we're at right now. But I mean, obviously, Starlink is dramatically increasing the amount in the sky, but it's not a ton. And the uncorrelated objects, just for the audience, because we've jumped back and forth between transients, which are these light flashes that you were detecting in these plates from the 50 to 56, and uncorrelated objects. Do we know that these are the same thing? Or
I have no idea.
Hard to say. Yeah.
I have no idea. I'm just speculating around this. I'm just curious and trying to look into this right now. These are just where my thoughts are wandering.
But if you saw that there was a drop-off in these uncorrelated objects around the Earth's shadow, you could show that, again, they're physical objects. And maybe if we could show that they were the same amount as what you found in the plates from, the 50s, maybe you'd get, some sort of match. But
would love to see that, like, especially these uncorrelated targets, if they come from optical sensors, it would be super interesting to see if they vanish in the Earth's shadow. It would also support not only that they're physical, but that they are artificial.
As it turns out, these uncorrelated targets are a gateway to a much deeper rabbit hole, stretching all the way back to the dawn of the space race. Our story begins in 1953, 4 years before Sputnik. Enter Major Donald Keyhoe, a retired Marine Corps naval aviator and one of the earliest public advocates for UFO disclosure. Keyhoe states something astonishing: that the Air Force was tracking 2 unknown artificial satellites, 400 and 600 miles up in low Earth orbit. The timing here was likely not a coincidence. That same year, a very unusual project started at White Sands Missile Range, a military-funded initiative to track small natural satellites, think asteroids captured in orbit. 2 remarkable scientists were in charge. First up is meteorite expert Dr. Lincoln LaPaz. Before joining this special search for mini-moons around Earth, Dr. LaPaz headed up Project Twinkle, an Air Force investigation into unexplained green fireballs showing up across American nuclear sites, documented at places like Los Alamos and Holloman Air Force Base. La Paz arrived at the conclusion that these green fireballs were not a known natural phenomenon, and they seemed to propel themselves intelligently. Second on the project, we have Clyde Tombaugh. Yes, that Clyde Tombaugh, the man who discovered Pluto. The man whose ashes are now speeding towards interstellar space inside the most expensive urn ever built, NASA's New Horizons spacecraft. Until the day he died, Tombaugh remained steadfast in his conviction that some UFOs could represent visiting alien spacecraft. So one has to wonder, given wild rumors from credible sources and the cast of characters involved, what exactly did they actually find? On August 23, 1954, Aviation Week and Space Technology published a statement from La Paz, one which begged way more questions than it answered. La Paz confirmed that there were indeed 2 unknown objects, but simultaneously he claimed that the 2 unknown objects were fully identified natural asteroids caught in Earth's gravitational grasp. He might have been doing this to dispel American domestic panic that this could have been Soviet tech. But if you read between the lines, there's a lot that just doesn't add up. Firstly, these observations directly corroborate Keyhoe's story. White Sands Missile Range actually was tracking 2 unidentified objects in low Earth orbit. But it also contradicts just about everything else we know about the historic and scientific record. These 2 quote-unquote natural satellites never show up again in any of the literature on asteroids and near-Earth objects. Given that the moon is regarded as the Earth's only permanent natural satellite, these 2 mini-moons should have been a major astrophysical discovery. I'm talking national news major. Yet we never heard about these 2 objects again. Perhaps strangest of all, in the official Near-Earth Satellite Project's final report, these 2 objects aren't even mentioned. Not only that, but the report concludes that there are no natural satellites orbiting the Earth. But if that was true, if there were really no natural satellites, then what the hell were these 2 unknowns? Perhaps most remarkably, the most important US government documents surrounding UFOs from exactly when the Palomar Observatory was making these observations in the early 50s, quite literally refers to objects with metallic and light-reflecting surfaces that were flat on the bottom. So the Air Force and CIA documents at the time describe objects that exactly sound like the mirror-like features Beatrice's data implies. These documents include the 1947 Twining Memo, the 1948 Project Sign analysis, and the CIA's analysis of the 1952 DC UFO flyover, along with Blue Book lead Captain Edward J. Ruppelt's analysis and more. UFOs are consistently described as light-reflecting, luminous, shiny, metallic objects, characteristics that would likely show up as light transients on astronomical plates like the Palomar observatories.
Different parts of the brain have different activities.
Well, you know that.